The wolf and the lamb will feed together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox. Doesn't Isaiah paint a beautiful picture that all will be well in the end? After years of exile, the people will return, and they'll remember that God is in charge, and everything will be good. And we smile, and we think, that would be nice, but it'll never happen. It's a nonsense, isn't it? The wolf and the lamb will eat together. No, they won't. The wolf will eat the lamb, because that's how it goes. Avril and I went out on a date on Friday night. I know how to spoil a girl, so we went to McDonald's. And then we went to the pictures. I even bought her popcorn and Maltesers. I know. I ate the popcorn and most of the Maltesers, but, the thought was there. And we drove home in complete silence. Not because we'd fallen out. We just couldn't find the words to say about what we'd just witnessed. We went to see Nuremberg. It's a film about the Nuremberg trials at the end of the Second World War. Obvious date night material. I have to admit that I didn't know much about those events. I knew that the trials had happened. I knew the outcome. But beyond that, I didn't really know very much about the process or even the personalities involved. The trials almost didn't happen. There was no mechanism, no international law. There was no precedent for anyone to be tried for war crimes. And there was no real appetite, to be honest. Nobody really wanted this to happen. It was fraught with possibilities that it could just all go wrong. Why not just execute them and be done with it? Eventually, as the scale of what had happened in the concentration camps across Europe unfolded, opinions changed. The Allies agreed that a military tribunal should be held and that the likes of Hermann Göring and Rudolf Hess should stand trial. And there's a really important question at the heart of these events that sits very uneasily with all of us. How could this happen? How could normal people like me and you commit such horrific acts? How could the massacre of people on an industrial scale ever be something that people like you and me could be involved in? It's a scary question. But the answer is even more terrifying. It can happen. It has happened a number of times throughout history. And it happens much more easily than any of us would like to imagine. The film's brilliant. You should watch it. It charts the relationship between Hermann Göring, Hitler's second-in-command, the Reichsmaster, the commander of the Air Force, and a guy called Douglas Kelly. Douglas Kelly is an American psychiatrist that they sent to study the people who were on trial, to look after their mental health so that they made it to the courtroom. In his appraisal of Göring, Kelly discovers what we fear the most. The step is not one big one. It's lots of little ones. The series of small steps to convince people to do bad things often makes perfect sense. Kelly wants to know what it was about a seemingly unimpressive failed artist that appealed to a man of the obvious intellect and charisma of someone like Göring. And so Göring recounts the moment when he first met Adolf Hitler. It was in a room above a pub. It was at a small political gathering. There were about 30 men gathered there. Most of them had been soldiers in the First World War. And Hitler spoke. He appealed to their frustration, to their fear, and he dressed it up as national pride. Germany had been economically broken by the Treaty of Versailles. Hitler pointed at the Jews. It's their fault. They caused this to happen to you. And from that moment, From that moment, Goring knew that this was the route to power. Jesus said, "Many will come and say, 'It's me. I'm the Saviour you've been looking for. I'm the one you've been waiting for. I'm the one who can sort all of your problems.'" And we fall for it almost every single time. Because the plan is really simple. Identify in simple terms people's problems and fears. Speak to those insecurities and give them someone to blame. From there, get elected. And when you get elected, change the rules. Scrap elections eventually. Ban opposition, call them traitors. And then heap all of the blame for society's ills on a minority group. They knew that ordinary people would join because they would feel better about themselves. They would feel better about themselves because they had someone else to blame. It wasn't their fault. Having someone else to blame also helps those in power to evade any real scrutiny, because it's always someone else's fault. We're doing this for your own good. If we just get rid of them, everything will be better. And it's a lie. But it's a hugely seductive lie. All you have to do is dehumanize those other people. And it's happened in our lifetime a number of times. It didn't just happen in Germany 100 years ago. It happened in Rwanda. It happened in the Balkans. It's happening in Gaza. But it's also the foundational story of the Bible. Genesis is the prequel. The Bible story starts in Egypt, where the Hebrews are the slaves of the Egyptians. The Egyptians had captured them, enslaved them, identified them as less than human. Remember, Pharaoh orders the death of all the firstborn boys because there was too many of them. So we'll just exterminate some of them. We'll stop them from multiplying. But to make that work, you need to talk about people in impersonal terms. It can't be you and me, it has to be them. And next you need to assert that them, they're all the same. You tar them with the brush of the worst actions of one or two of them. And you stoke the narrative of fear. They are multiplying. They are taking over. That's what Pharaoh said. We use words like infestation because we allow ourselves to think of other people as a problem to be solved. In Rwanda, people called their neighbours cockroaches. Cockroaches need to be exterminated because that's how infestations are dealt with. Round them up, put them in camps, make them work hard. They don't deserve the same rights as us. The steps are so small. It makes perfect sense. And we enthusiastically join in. What strikes me most, though, is what's called the cognitive dissonance of all of this. Cognitive dissonance is where we hold two completely opposing ideas at the same time, and we think that they're both okay. We don't see the contradiction. So, for example, we can listen to Jesus saying, "Love your enemy. Pray for people who hate you." And we approve of that. We say, yeah, that's what we think. We agree that we should love our neighbour. We nod at the end of the parable of the Good Samaritan when the person's limited view of who their neighbour is blown up. It's the guy you don't like. It's the one you don't want to be your neighbour. And at the same time, We approve of treating people who have done nothing wrong like criminals, rounding them up with no evidence, treating people as less than human. And all this happens again and again and again because we watch films like Nuremberg and we shake our heads and we sit in silence for a while and we imagine that we could never do that it could never happen here, that we would never fall for that. And then we sleepwalk into the arms of those who appeal to exactly the same emotions and ideas. And in these times, Jesus tells us that some will cling to faith. Some people will refuse to go along. They'll try to remind their families. They'll try to share our humanity and goodness and kindness. They'll try to repeat the lessons of history. And people won't listen. They'll hand over their parents and their partners, their children and their friends, and they will call them traitors. And we imagine that we'll be the strong ones, that we'll be the ones that will hang on to our faith. Jesus tells us that this thing that we have built, this society, at some point will lie in ruins. The temple in the passage today is a metaphor. By the time Luke writes this gospel, the temple has already been destroyed. The Romans knocked it down. And they killed everyone involved in the rebellion. The temple was a great shrine to God. It was massive, like unbelievably big. The stones were huge. It was designed by a group of people whose ancestors had been slaves in Egypt. And it was built by slaves. Cognitive dissonance. The new kingdom with no king only lasted a couple of generations before the lust for wealth and power had taken over. These people whose founding story was an escape from slavery kept slaves. The people who worshipped the God of peace built an army. It was unimaginable that the temple would be brought down somehow. The force that would be required, the violence needed was beyond people's experience and understanding. And then came the Romans with a whole different level of experience and understanding. And they applied all of that to weapons of war. The kind of passages that we read today can frighten us. It's all about the end of the world. Although I wonder if sometimes it doesn't frighten us nearly enough. Wars and rumours of wars, and then an entertainment show. Natural disasters that we shake our heads in disbelief at and continue with the rest of our lives. Insurrections that we justify. I wonder if we were a little more concerned about the impacts of these things on our brothers and sisters around the world, then we might act more in a way that's motivated beyond our narrow self-interests. We imagine that these big world events are completely out with our control. That they're things that happen to us, not because of us. And to think that brings us dangerously close to the defence used at Nuremberg. It was just following orders. I didn't know that that was happening. It was him. It wasn't me. There were some who tried to tell the people how this would end. But prophets are laughed at, ignored, imprisoned, called traitors, and killed. The philosopher R.G. Collingwood tells us that the only clue to what man can do is what man has done. in this season of remembrance, where our poppies become quickly an afterthought, discarded after a very short moment of remembering. I wonder if we should again be confronted by the reality that it could so easily be us. It has been us. Jesus tells us that in these moments of persecution for our faith, we'll be given the words that we need. They're the words of truth that Jesus has already laid before us. The truth that every single person is a child of God. That every single person is a child of God. That there is no other. We won't have to prepare what to say because these are the words that we will live by. Words that are emblazoned on our hearts. Not just things that we give lip service to and then carry on. These are the words that fill our souls. And at some point we'll learn. At some point we will realise. At some point we'll say never again for the very last time. And when we do learn, and when we do realise, and when we have said that for the very last time, the wolf and the lamb will feed together. The lion will eat straw like the ox, and the serpent shall have food that is dust. No one will hurt or destroy on God's holy mountain. Because at that point, the kingdom of God will have come. If only we would learn.